Thank you for joining today's webinar, VDI in Government with Sacramento County Superior Court. We want to thank everyone for joining today and for Citrix for co-sponsoring this event with us at Unidesk here. I want to introduce our presenters for today. We have Eric Rowland, Lead Systems Engineer at Citrix. He'll be a panelist, as well as Rob Zalowski, Senior Solution Architect for Unidesk. And of course, our keynote presenter, Ron Berardi, who has been an enterprise architect at Sacramento County Superior Court for 7 years. A couple logistics I want to go over before we launch into the presentation. Just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded. So if you'd like to share this with other members of your team afterwards, it will be made available to everybody, and you can watch it whenever on demand. Also, we like these presentations to be as interactive as possible. So if you think of any questions while any of our panelists are speaking, feel free to type them into the questions panel on your GoToWebinar console, and we'll be fielding those throughout. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ron, and he will begin the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Amy. I appreciate the opportunity here to speak for everybody and give a kind of a brief overview of what our story is in VDI in government and how it benefited working with Unidesk and Citrix. This is definitely a relationship that we find very valuable, and we want to go ahead and keep promoting, the relationship of both Citrix and Unidesk. And we'll give a quick, brief description of how we were able to implement this into our environment and how it benefited the courts, as a whole. So with that said, I want to go ahead and just a little bit of introduction about the courts. We're a Superior Court of Sacramento, part of the judicial branch. Approximately 650 employees. That number changes from time to time, but from those, we have currently deployed about 660 VDI clients with plans to move between 800 and 1,000. Now, 650 employees going to about 1,000 desktops being deployed out there. We essentially host not only our internal users, but also other outside agencies and departments that are not exactly court employees. So we do kind of move towards the desktop as a cloud provider or desktop as a service. From that, our IT staff consists of about 25 IT members. Today, we have approximately 5 of those signed to VDI, and we're trying to grow that out as we continue down this path. But originally, we were starting out with only 2 IT staff signed to, one on the infrastructure side and one on the desktop side. For the courts, we have approximately 10 locations split across the Sacramento County, and we deploy the VDI to each and every one of those, as well as home-based users and remote users as well. So getting into this conversation, what I would like to do is give you a little brief history of where our court came from in a quote-unquote VDI or virtualization world, because it's really important to understand where we started at to understand or appreciate where we are today. About 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, we went ahead and our original CTO created a project plan that wanted to go ahead and deploy, bring Citrix in-house and move to more of a published app and published desktop experience using Zen app and terminal services. Conceptually, this was a great idea. Technology was there. It worked well. But we ran into a lot of problems, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of hurdles, throughout this initial project. At the time, we had about 70 to 80 applications that we were trying to bundle up and put onto a terminal service environment to deploy out to all our end users. So we're taking the original users that had, their PCs, they're so used to their individual environment, and now putting them into this published app or shared desktop environment. That was a lot of technical for us. One was the complexity for the IT staff to learn. I mean, we had limited IT staff assigned to this. Virtualization was new to them at the time. The Citrix client deployment side was new. All the Citrix technologies were new, as well as VMware, which we run as a hypervisor below, as well as just the concept of trying to make everything work in a small bucket. How do all these applications work together? How can we publish apps in a multi-user environment? Dealing with dependencies on each one of the operating systems for the applications, and so on and so on. It turned out to be a very complex and hard to get a hold of environment for not only our IT staff, but as you can see on the second bullet here, also for our end users. We tried to deploy it out to them and give some initial pilot runs, Some of them were successful and some were not. And it was not a failed project by any means to the technology, but more the use case that we were trying to initially deploy out there. We thought that we can do a 80 to 90% conversion of our applications and our users to this environment. We honestly, we learned quick that was not the best solution. So fast forward a couple of years now, the introduction of VDI came onto the market. Well, this was very appealing to us because we said, hey, this is kind of the virtualization environment that we're looking for without having to deal with the complexity of the multi-user environment or shared environments. So they said, why would VDI be a better solution? Well, here's a couple of quick examples that we want to post on here. First and foremost, demanding users want a more personalized desktop experience than we can provide with terminal services. Now, we highlight on here especially judges because, as I said earlier, we are a court environment. The court is run by our judges, our exec staff. We have approximately 80 to 90 judges. So anybody out there who is in this similar environment can understand that we have about 80 to 90 bosses. So we needed a solution that would provide very personalized environments for each and every one of those, as well as the rest of our staff. So take that note, 80, 90 bosses, and try to, I'm sure you can understand that that is not a easy task to do in the old shared, desktop or published desktop or published app environment. So VDI, this looked like a much better solution. We give all their personalized desktops, provide them individual work environment, a good win. So second bullet, some of our core applications didn't work well in shared session environments, but would work fine on their own VM. Again, referencing back to what everybody I'm sure has out there going today, you have proprietary apps. You have apps that are built on Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 2000 server, 2003 server, but yet today's environment we're now running on 2008, 2012, and all this newer technology. Well, when you try to take all those applications, dump them into a single, server environment and share it out from there, now you have a lot of interoperability issues depending on the operating system that you're hosting from. Well, with VDI, obviously we can work away from that, give everybody their individual desktops that the applications were originally built for, and can run, in a much easier environment or situation. Third bullet, a dedicated virtual machine could offer personalization our IT users or our users wanted while keeping administration simple for IT. Of course, we want to be able to manage all these applications, the user desktops. We want to be able to centralize that. We want to be able to keep control of it, but while giving users a personalization. Just yet another reason why VDI is a much better solution than we were originally looking at in the previous days. So now we take why we want VDI to be a better solution, and from the lessons learned originally task, we start to develop these hurdles that we have to overcome. These are kind of quick bullets of like, hey, if we're going to go ahead and move forward with VDI, these are the hurdles that we need to overcome to make this a successful project. First, lack of IT resources. Like I said earlier, we only have so many IT staff that we can assign to a VDI deployment. We're a semi-small shop. There's definitely smaller shops out there, but there's definitely larger ones as well. Amongst our shop in here, resources are stretched thin as it is. So now we need to be able to figure out a way to pull out these resources, dedicate them to VDI, while still continuing to move forward with the rest of our projects. So we needed a way to make it easy to manage, both from an infrastructure standpoint and from a desktop standpoint, especially from a desktop standpoint. Third bullet. I know some of you guys are laughing at this, and I know some of you guys are saying this is crazy, but I also know that out there are plenty of people who have the same situation. Everyone has admin rights to desktops. I am embarrassed to say it. The truth was our environment. Everyone had their desktops. They had full admin rights on there. The IT staff would control application deployments from the back end, would control some of the websites they can visit, the storage that they can use, but still, ultimately, they had full reign of their personal desktop that they can add games to, put iTunes on, update their applications as they felt necessary. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole how much of hassle that creates there, but that was the environment that they had. We needed to get user buy-in, so we needed to address this as a hurdle, that we needed to keep the users just as happy as they were prior to VDI and given what they were used to having. So the court mandated. Go ahead.
Yeah, We have a question here. So was that one of the major barriers for hosted shared desktop that led you to the VDI initiative? Was that admin rights and that need to customize their desktop? Is that the major point that pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, that was definitely a major one. Not only from the ability to customize their desktops, but unfortunately some of the original applications that were built were writing to the C drive or updating system files, so they needed to have admin rights as that user to function. So this was a huge bullet point for us to overcome, not only from a user standpoint, but from a IT aspect as well. So given that, courts said, hey, if we're going to move to a virtual desktop environment, we want it to perform the same, if not better, than a physical PC. All right, so we all know this is already going to be a challenge because everybody says, virtual is never as fast as, a PC, which we understand sometimes is true. Maybe it is, you are dealing with shared resources out there, but we kind of looked at this as if we can meet the benchmark of what their older PCs were doing with a newer, updated virtual environment, meet the benchmark there, but then also provide them other luxuries that they don't have today, such as connecting from home. Their desktop follows them to any location that they go at. With Citrix, the roaming sessions are great. I can move from one desktop to the next, and boom, my desktop follows me. I never have to change the setting. My printers are there, my settings are there, my favorites are there. So those are the kind of that we remark on exactly for end users to get them to meet this. And then again, that falls into the final bullet there. How do we rebuild end users' confidence in the server-hosted desktops, convince them that VDI would be a better solution? So how do we do this? As any VDI environment consists of, there's a stack of technology behind it. It's never, at least in our environment, it's never just a one-stop shopping solution. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen right now, you can see this is the technology stack that we use throughout the court here. We have on our storage, we're a NetApp shop. We were originally there. We had NetApp in our environment for many years, so we said, let's go ahead and ride on the existing technology that we have. I know a lot of new shops now are bringing in SSD drives and flash-based and, these VDI in a box scenarios. They all work great as well. We just decided to move forward with NetApp because that's what we had. Cisco, on the server side, we're a Cisco UCS shop. We originated with, started out the process with HP rack mount servers, and then quickly migrated into the Cisco UCS Blade environment, which we've been super happy with. We're on the hypervisor level. We're running vSphere across. Currently on an ESX 5.1 environment, planning to move to 5.5 or 6, depending on the release tools and interoperability with the rest of our stack here. Of course, you guys know that we're running Unidesk, and Citrix is our deployment method. From this, now again, just giving quick stats of where we are today, and then we'll kind of talk about how we overcame the hurdles to get here. 660 Unidesk managed persistent desktops. So the persistent desktop's an important key port, to go back and talk about everybody wanted their own personalized environment. They wanted admin rights. The persistent desktops are what gave us the ability to do this. We have 55 applications delivered as layers, and I don't know if for those who are familiar with Unidesk or not, maybe down the road or when we get into the demos a little bit later, I can show you how our layering system is, and maybe Unidesk can explain a little bit more about how they use layers to accomplish these goals. One Windows 7 operating for all of us. We have three operating system layers out there. 99% of our staff or users use one existing image. This was a huge benefit for us. Hey, we got to patch one, an operating system. We just got to do it in one spot, deploy it out, end of story. Each one of our users has 8 to 12 gigabytes per disk space. They're averaging about 10 right now is our standard. 10 gigs of personalized disk space. They can do whatever they want to do. That does not include the use of their application or the storage space required for their applications or their operating system. This is just 10 gigs of their personal space per desktop. And of course,
Ron, it's Rob.
Yep.
I just wanted to interject. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's working at a pharmaceutical company that's using Zen Desktop, and they actually have for 1,200 desktops, 22 images that they use because they don't have layering technology, so they have to put some applications in the image. And what that ends up doing is kind of blowing out the number of images that they have to manage. So instead of one when they want to patch, basically all he's doing in all of his time is patching those 22 images basically kind of every other week.
And I could totally see that. And just to verify, that is a Zen desktop environment without the Unidesk management piece, correct?
Correct.
Yep. So now you got an idea of what our stack looks like from a technology standpoint. I'll kind of just give you a quick infrastructure overview of what it looks like to us on our design side. As far as Unidesk is concerned, we have our management appliance on top here, this UM8P01. That is our Unidesk management console. From Unidesk, we have deployed 4 cache points out across our ESX environment. Each one of these cache points is responsible for the layering technology or deploying the desktops, reboots, the kind of the managing points for each one of our desktops that we have. Right now, we're averaging about 160 to 170 desktops assigned per cache point. I know Unidesk might say, you go smaller or go bigger. Obviously, it's always dependent on an individual environment's storage or maintenance windows and so forth, but you can expand this linearly and go less desktops per cache point or more if you have the capabilities to do so. Our environment talks with Zen desktop brokers on the outside and vCenter on the other side. So Unidesk will be the responsible party for going ahead and creating the desktops, deploying them out onto our vCenter environment. We can then go ahead and update Zen desktop to add them to our catalogs or user groups, and then now make the desktop available for end users to connect to. Guys from Unidesk, I'm not sure if you want to interject any information on the Unidesk technology or infrastructure build, according to our environment, or.
We can talk. Ron is on the high side of the number of desktops per cache point, which goes along with a data store as well. And of course, the way NetApp works, they combine all the disks together into aggregates, so it's a little different than some storage platforms. What you're really working at there in a design goal is to make sure that you're not overutilizing the disks, because the disks are shared within each data store and each cache point. So you have that OS layer, it sits there once, and in Ron's case, 160 desktops are using the same VMDK file for the OS files. It actually works very well. A lot of that gets cached in his SPs. So you do have to control how many machines are attaching to any one disk. And I think VMware's recommendation is around 120. But the key is it's really around contention for those disks. So if your users are a little less busy than some others, you might be able to get more or less. It's working fine for Ron, so for him it's okay to be at that level.
Yeah, and just like you said, one VMDK deployed out amongst 120 to 160 desktops, that's a huge storage savings for us on the back end. We can maintain one copy of that OS, per each cache point, and we share it out amongst each one of the desktops. So that you'd run the numbers, whatever the size of the image is times 160 desktops, divide that out, and you can see what kind of storage we're actually saving, by using this technology.
Right, and if you think about it also, for caching, it becomes much better as well because you're caching the same blocks. You don't have a different operating system for every desktop that therefore can't really be cached by the storage. In this case, almost all of the operating system can be cached.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward then. So let's talk a little bit about how Unidesk came into play and helped us overcome these hurdles that we were facing originally. And I'll talk about this quickly here. And then once we get into the demo phase, I'll go ahead and show you, what most of these mean. Lack of IT resource and experience. Unidesk simple unified management solution allows easy transition of VDI back to the desktop team where it belongs. This was one of, if not the biggest, selling points for us when it came to Unidesk. I'm the infrastructure guy on my side. I'll handle a lot of VMware, networking, and server side. I do have another gentleman out who's in charge of storage and Linux, so we work together as a team very well. But we're very limited, and we're very focused on the infrastructure side of things. We do not want or have the capacity to deal with desktops on a day-to-day basis, operating system, patching, applications, user management, personalization, things like that. We don't have the capacity to do this and do it successfully. Some shops, smaller user base, maybe get away with it, but the minute you get to a mid to large size environment, this is not going to work well. So we needed a way to be able to go ahead and hand off virtualized desktop management back to our desktop technicians. Now, originally, these, our desktop technicians, they're great at what they do on the desktop side, but they had very little infrastructure knowledge and very little virtualization knowledge. So we looked to Unidesk to be that one pane of glass that kind of merged the two environments together, or the two departments together, to where we can set up the infrastructure on our team, we can hand off the management console and information to our desktop team, and from there they can still go ahead and deploy desktops, manage the patching, manage the applications, the user controls, everything that they need to do from a virtualized side, they can do it from this using Unidesk. And the best part of it is that they didn't need to have the complete infrastructure knowledge. They didn't need to learn VMware. They didn't need to learn NetApp. They didn't need to learn the Cisco or the networking side. They just need to take the desktops and learn a small little piece with the Unidesk management GUI, and the rest of it was cake for them. So this was a very big one that we needed a tool that could allow the desktop team to remain the desktop team. Ease of management, layering for simple centralized desktop or delivery of applications and OSs. Don't require complex infrastructure knowledge, and it's kind of repeating what I just said, and a simple GUI interface. And the other big one, again, like we mentioned earlier, was the administrative rights. Persistent desktops allow users the freedom to install their own apps with minimal disk space, while IT maintains control of the core applications. So as we'll kind of talk about through the demo stage, IT will go ahead and set up basically read-only layers for the operating system and application, so we control the deployment, what applications and what patch levels and stuff they have from the operating system and application side. We'll deploy that out, and with every one of the users, we provision 10 gigs of personalization space that they can go ahead and install their games, install their one-off applications that they want. They can make changes to their desktop, and all that gets held inside their personalization layer. So it's kind of a win-win. IT remains in control, and users get their freedom that they want. Something that was really hard for us to accomplish before. Try using Roman profiles or different application deployment tools, and there's technology that does work, but it's extremely complex, and a lot of that remained back in the infrastructure or networking team side. Here we can do all this while keeping it on the desktop team side. Very important to us. So primarily this is how Unidesk helped us to overcome the hurdles from the Unidesk standpoint. We now add Citrix into the group from the deployment side, and of course I'm assuming we got Citrix has been around for many years. It's proven technology. They've been a leading player in this market for a very long time, if not the leader. So they kind of speak for themselves. The user experience and acceptance, Citrix HDF protocol and supported clients provide the performance and flexibility our end users demand. We have clients that connect from MacBooks, Windows machines, Linux machines. We have Androids, iPads, iPhones, Windows phones. You name the outside world, they're connecting from any device. Citrix, was a great buy-in for this because these guys allow us to do that and allow us the flexibility from, like they always tell you, any device from anywhere at any time. And I hate saying it, but for the most part, it's fairly true. As a value, we were an existing XenApp customer. Like I said, we originally tried XenApp deployment, and so we owned a bunch of XenApp licenses originally. When moving to the VDI realm and the introduction of Zen Desktop, they offered a 2-for-1 promotion, where if we trade in one of our XenApp licenses, they would give us 2 Zen Desktop licenses. So essentially, kind of a 50% savings. If I'm correct from hearing from the Citrix guys, this is still a valid promotion out there. So I definitely suggest if anybody is a current XenApp or Zen Desktop or Citrix customer but doesn't have VDI deployed, talk to your sales rep, make use of this because this was a good value save for us. And supporting Desktop as a Service initiative, Citrix WAN optimization and remote features access or features needed as we expand VDI to support external agencies and departments. Like I said, today, today's environment we have roughly 600 50 employees, but we're planning to move into 1,000 desktops. So we needed technology that would allow access from outside of our walls into our VDI environment, securely and ease of management. So this is definitely a key role that Citrix played in here, and we've been happy with that, ever since. So any questions
Ron, how do
so
you have
far?
people come in from the outside? Is it through NetScaler or?
Yep, right now we have NetScalers. We have an HA pair of NetScalers deployed out there, so everybody just goes to our web portal, punches in their username, and any applications or desktops available to them will present themselves, and they can launch it from there. If people are using their MacBooks or iPads, there's Citrix offers a receiver that's downloaded an application, and everything just travels through an SSL tunnel through our NetScalers and into our inside environment.
Okay, great. Clyde, did that answer your question? It did. Great.
It did? Okay, great. Any other questions before moving on? I mean, this is kind of the quick, give you an overview of where the courts came from, goals were, how we got there. And next I plan to move into just a little quick demo on what Unidesk, how we manage it, how we can deploy a desktop, maybe update an application, go from there. So if anybody's got questions before doing so, please ask. If not, we'll go ahead and move into a demo. All right, so demo. So for demo, what I'm going to do here, let me jump out of this real quick. I'm going to bring you to this is our live environment. This is not a setup demo that Unidesk, anybody has paid or developed for us. This is our work environment. We deal with this every day, in and out, so anything that you see occurring right now is how we see it on a day-to-day basis. Definitely no smoke and mirrors here. This is what we got. So just a quick demo and show you how easy we can go ahead and move forward with some of our tasks that we do. I'm going to go ahead and bring you to a desktop, and I apologize for court reasons. I'm going to go ahead and hide usernames and desktop assignments. Whoops, apparently it keeps wanting to come back here. Sorry about that. So let me go ahead and give you an example. Our desktop team, has access to this management console. So go ahead and log in. We come to them and say, hey, we need a new desktop created for, for whoever. So all they simply do right now is go in here. They can either right-click or choose Create Desktop on the right-hand side. Choose Create Desktop. We'll go ahead and set up. We go ahead and pre-configure templates. So we'll just define a backup maintenance windows, how many CPUs, what kind of operating system, how much memory on there. Kind of pre-populated template. So our primary template we use is this Win 7 32-bit. You can see what the kind of resources that we deploy out to our users. Everybody's got 2 virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM, based upon the 32-bit limitations. Those who have 64-bit, can definitely upgrade that.
And I assume that was around that requirement to make it as fast as a physical, correct?
We actually started out with 2 gigs in the beginning, and some of our users that were using, heavy users were doing videos or renderings and so forth. It wasn't working out the best that we had. So buying into Cisco UCS, we had an ample amount of RAM available to us. I think each one of our hosts right now, we have 500, basically half a terabyte of RAM per blade. So we were able to, give them the 4 gigs of RAM per desktop.
Sure.
So from here, I'll go ahead and say I want to assign a user. The one demo thing I did do was create a demo user. This is just a copy of one of our everyday employees that we have here. I'll go ahead and select my Unidesk 3 demo guy. I'll say next. Our template that we pre-populated before just decides what VMware cluster we want to dump it on. We automatically generate a name for the desktop based upon an expression that we built, prior. So it'll be VDI/W7/ whatever the next number increment is. The network that we provision on VMware as well, and we're going to make it a persistent desktop. We'll go ahead and hit next, and as you can see, our standard template only has one operating system available to choose from. We do have multiple revisions of those if we want to go ahead for patching purposes, or we try upgrades, we can choose those. But like I said, 99% of our people are running on this single image that we choose from by default. We'll go ahead next. And I'll come into the applications conversation next, but if I want to go through here, we have, like I said earlier, we have 55 application layers available to us. If you want to go ahead and choose any one of these, you can do so. You can pick Adobe, keep them down a list. You basically just choose from a list of applications of which one you want available to us. Essential forms, applications that we have in here. Just kind of go down the list and pick the applications that you want. So for fun, we'll leave the 2 applications on there now. We'll go ahead and choose next. If you want to make any changes for that individual desktop, you can do it here now. These numbers are pre-populated based upon our template that we had put in there. And you can see this right here. There's our 10 gigs of personal users. Some people may have large apps or want to store a ton of video files or something in their own desktop, and I don't recommend that. Obviously, I'd want to put that out on a more secure or centralized storage. But they can, you can make the adjustment here if you need be.
And Ron, with that
Yep.
screen there, there's a question on the in the chat panel. How many UCS hosts are you running for your VDI infrastructure?
UCS hosts. I'll come back here, back to the slides just to show you. We currently have 8, and the way that we break it up. Slide. So the way that we design our environment is that we have 8 UCS blades. We're running the B230s with half a terabyte of RAM per. So in this, oops, let me go back. So in this example here, you can see that for each cache point, we assign them to 2 different hosts. So for HA, they can go back and forth if I lose a host. But we'll have 8 total in our environment, and this right here was sized based upon 800 users with 4 gigs of RAM per. I could handle a little bit more, but I also like to keep some room for an N+1 if I lose a host, that all my desktops can be migrated over to another host without running into resource contention. So actually in this environment, I might be able to lose up to 2 hosts. As we get closer to 800, I'll be more positive in saying I can lose 1 host. As we continue to grow on and get up to 1,000, I'll start to add another cache point and 2 more hosts into our environment and spread linearly.
There's also a question, why so many persistent desktops from Clyde? And Clyde, the reason that Ron needs the desktop numbers he has, that's the number of users that he has. So each person gets their own desktop in a persistent model, and that's always theirs, and everything that they save is saved on that, whether it's that they install an application and the applications have drivers or services or don't. But in a persistent model, each user needs to have their own so that when they want to use it, they can. It's not a shared model. But the advantage of it is for all those custom applications and things that don't work well in a shared environment, they will work well in a persistent desktop environment.
And
Correct.
to further that, I would also think that in a lot of environments where you aren't forced to have everybody be administrator, that may not be the best use case. But in this environment, given what Ron's described, and having worked with lawyers and judges in my experience, I know his pain, and they don't usually take "no, you can't do that" as an answer. That's not an acceptable answer. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If you ask any one of my bosses here, they know I preach to them every day, and I fight and I advocate. I would love to have a more, at least a subset of use cases to be a non-persistent desktop, or take away the admin rights to cases I can. But in our environment in the courts, it is a culture that people have their very personal work environment, and we want to maintain that option for them. In the past we didn't quite have the ability, but now with Unidesk we were able to provide that. Hopefully, years down the road that we can start to move away. Once we got everybody bought into the VDI world, and this is just an everyday realm for them, maybe we can start moving away from the full persistent desktop. But in today's environment, yeah, that's what we have to provide to end users.
And then there was another question, Ron, about why not use personal vDisk instead of doing it with Unidesk? Personal vDisk came around after you actually implemented Unidesk.
Correct. And then, the one answer I can give you on that one is it's the need for management of that. When doing the persistent disk from here, I was able to, with Unidesk, again, the big thing was, hey, I need to shift a lot of this administration back to my desktop team. I'm sure there, and Rob, maybe you can help me out with this, with the personal vDisk. There are some limitations to the personal vDisk as well, and I'm not sure if you got the stats on that.
Personal vDisk works. You can think of it almost like our personalization layer, but it is unmanaged and it's not managing the rest of the applications. So if you want to, for instance, we have repair or backup and repair of our desktops, which Ron uses. If the desktop gets damaged for any reason, we can repair the personalization back to a prior point in time. That's not something that's included in personal vDisk. And of course, the whole layering technology itself is not included with personal vDisk. So the customers that we have that are Citrix customers are buying it more than just for users being able to install their own things and keep their own configuration, which you would get with personal vDisk. It's for the overall holistic management that we do.
And from a Citrix standpoint, we would completely agree with that. That PVD is great for if you're looking for just to let the user install their own things, but if you want to manage and layer in the applications the way Unidesk provides, then that's outside of the scope of our expertise and what we're trying to do. So we have a partner in Unidesk that can bring that value.
Great.
Okay.
I think that's all the questions for right now, Ron. If you want to go back to your call. Thanks a lot.
Yep, no problem. All right, so leaving back off here, we're going to go ahead and continue down the GUI here. Next step is asking for a maintenance window. We defined a court-based maintenance window, which luckily we have some larger windows. We'll have to schedule this out, but every place has their own windows. You can customize the maintenance windows available to you, and whatever works best for your SLAs or your customers. We'll go ahead and choose our maintenance window we defined. Say confirm, create desktop, and let that run. Right now, creating a desktop or a batch of desktops takes approximately 10 minutes to do so. So while that's going on, we can come over here and we can see running. We're creating a desktop right now. We can see the task is running. If I were to flip over to vSphere, I would see that a lot of the Unidesk is communicating with the vCenter. The tasks are running, desktop's being built, configured, reloaded. It basically have to go through copy the disk, or not copy this, but deploy the VM, boot up the OS image. We're running sysprep on the back end for adding to the domain and a couple other settings. So it's got to run through that whole process. So Unidesk will do one part of the deployment, and then Windows has to do its typical, boot up, sysprep, restart, and so forth, add it to the domain and so on. So the complete process right now for us is taking about 10 minutes on the desktop, and that is not a serial addition. Like if I had 20 desktops, it wouldn't be 20 desktops times 10 minutes. They do in parallel. So we'll leave it here, create step, go through its step process and run it and deploy the desktop. So we'll come back to this, unless anybody has any questions regarding.
Now, one thing I could add is we actually do 4 processes at a time per cache point. So Ron has 4 cache points. If they would be deploying desktops across all 4, so you'd be making 16 at a time. We don't do more than that because we don't want to overwhelm the infrastructure as part of that. And then the other tasks that happen there is you don't have to worry about it. We handle any replication. So if a layer has never been used before, it has to be copied to each data store by each cache point. So that all happens automatically as that process is happening.
And we have one more question, Ron, from the audience.
Sure.
If during OS patching some of the apps are broken, how do you handle that?
So our typical process is, we'll go through a vetting process at first, right? Initially, we'll go ahead and we'll create a new version of the operating system. We'll install it, the patch. We'll deploy it out through a pilot testing. We'll do admin testing inside first, kind of quick vetting of the applications and make sure the operating system is working fine. Then we'll deploy it out to a small subset of test users, out there that will function on this application. They'll run with that for about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the severity of the patch. Once we vetted that everything's working good, we'll go ahead and deploy it out to the rest of our users. At that point, if there turns out to be a problem that we did not foresee, or somebody finds something that we didn't find before, it's very simple. We can simply go back, grab those desktops that we had, and I can show you kind of an example. Let's see. I'm gonna let this run. So I'm gonna close this right now. Let that continue to run. So let me go ahead and let's do this. Here's one demo desktop that I created prior. And let's say if I need to make a change on here, I gave the one repair desktops, which if somebody deploys something on their own in their personalization and create a problem, I can roll them back using repairs, or I'll simply come in here and this. If I deploy a patch, and we find a problem with it down the road, I'll probably repair that. So let's come right to our system and say, okay, hey, we deployed from version 1.1 to 1.2. If I want to go ahead and restore back to 1.1, I'll go ahead and click on there. I'll choose the maintenance window that I want to do so. For this example, since this is a demo desktop, I'm going to do it right away. Let's say as soon as possible. Click right down and say update desktop. This is going to initiate a reboot on the desktop side, but you can see there in just a couple of clicks, times however many or I don't want to say times. You can grab all the desktops that you need to do this to, run just a couple of clicks, and then now you've just completely reverted back to or undeployed the change that you just made, out to all your end users. So however long that reboot cycle takes for it to redeploy the new application layer, that's how long it would take for you to roll back that patch. So one user, not so impressive, but now you got 1,000, 10,000, however many desktops. You can see the time savings really adds up quick. And again, just to remind everybody,
you can recreate a desktop with the same layers that person who had, or those people who had a problem with, and then try to troubleshoot why did you have that issue. Is it just actually the one person, or is it something more systematic between a couple layers? Because sometimes you can get interactions between layers, and then you can try to fix what the problem is.
Sure. Yeah, every situation is different, right? So bring our IT troubleshooting skills into play and figure out what the best course of action is. So at least you know that if you need to roll back, do a full rollback, it really is just a click of a few buttons, and you don't need to have, a full, network guy or infrastructure guy running this. This can be handed out to anyone in the IT staff.
The other big advantage with Unidesk, you're only installing when you package. The apps don't get installed on each desktop. They just get put together, the different layers. So you won't have failed installations. You could have interactions you didn't foresee, and that could be where you have a problem, but you won't have where an application doesn't install, because we never install. We only install when you actually package it.
All right. So if we're okay on questions there?
Yep, you're fine to go on.
All right. So, I mentioned earlier, we'll let that desktop continue building. It's about 10 minutes time, so we'll check back in just a few minutes to see where it's at. Also, I guess, interactively, we just added how to roll back a operating system layer or a patch, so we got that running as well. But let me talk a little bit about how we break up our applications. As you can see right here, we said we had 55 application layers. A layer is, I want to consider, and maybe this has a different term for this, but I like to use it, just a container of settings or applications or modifications that you need to make for that particular deployment. They don't need to be one application per one layer. You could have Microsoft Office, the whole suite inside a layer, as well as, SharePoint services or other services inside their driver updates, printer drivers. You can package that all into a single layer for deployment. We try to focus, in our environment, we try to go ahead and break up the layers as much as we can, so it makes for ease of management of the applications. For instance, our Adobe breakup here. We have Adobe Standard 10.11, Adobe Professional 10.11. We separate those into different layers, so that way, if I need to do updates on, I can add patches or updates to each one of the layers without affecting any other applications that are installed in that particular layer. Just makes it a little bit easier for us. each one of the applications, and I'm just kind of shooting from my hip here, taking a look at. This one just has one different version. Let me see if I can find one that has multiple versions.
You could switch to your OS layer, actually, because you have a lot.
Oh, yeah. I guess it works. So application layers and OS layers essentially work the same concept. But if I were to go ahead and look at my old operating system layer here, yeah, there we go.
Too impatient.
Sorry about that. Yeah. You gotta stop clicking on everything. But yeah, you can see the revision history that we do either per application layer or per operating system layer that we can as we deploy patches or service packs or any updates so that and they keep a reference of each one as we move up each line, and then which desktops are assigned to that version of the layer. So I can have a single layer with multiple versions, while multiple people are running different versions of that layer. Primarily, you'll see that majority of our people are on this version 1.2 for the operating system. But as we just went ahead and deployed this latest one, the 453, that was the desktop that we just updated, did the patch example rollback of the operating system. So having this capability to separate the layers out, create different versions per each layer, and and deploy them out to desktops on just a per-click basis really makes things a lot easier for us. So if I want to give an example of what it would be like to go ahead and update these layers, or I want to add one of these layers to our desktops. Oops, let me go to my desktops. I'll grab another desktop that I have available to me. I can just go ahead and right-click and say Edit.
And one neat thing, Ron, did you notice he searched by user, and the user is assigned to that desktop, so he was able to quickly get the desktop for that user. You can also use email address or phone number from Active Directory. You can search on all of those.
I didn't know that. I learn something new every day. So we can see this desktop here has no applications deployed to it. It's just a blank template. For us, we choose to put Microsoft Office on the base OS because every user in our environment is going to have that application. So we just made a choice that we're going to put that right into our gold image. Since it's so easy just to update the gold image or the operating system layer, we just treat that as an application update as well. But if I want to go ahead and add these applications, I can choose Adobe. We could choose anyone. I'm not even sure what some of these applications are, but I can go ahead and pick out some of them. Say Crystal Reports. Just grab the applications that you want. Go ahead and choose the maintenance window. We're going to again do it right now since it's a demo. And say Update Desktop. And then watch our test. We can see. Here we go. So just as Rob mentioned, that if the layer is not available on a particular cache point at a time, for application layers, that they will automatically go ahead and grab a copy of that application layer, deploy it to the cache point data stores, and then make it available to the end users or to the desktop being created. So while that's going forward and we're basically adding applications to a desktop, we could also see that our previous two tasks of deploying desktops was created. So now this is desktop number 471. So if I were to go ahead and jump into my Zen desktop environment and look for 471, type in. I can see that now it's available. We're registered, powered on. This desktop is now ready for an end user to go ahead and access. So if I want to, show from an end user standpoint, I can go ahead and just say, hey, I want to log in as the user. Now I have a desktop available to me. I highlight over for a little while, you can see the desktop number is available. Oh, I went in as Unidesk 1, not Unidesk 2 or 3, so I have a different number, but still the
You
same.
have to pull that to your other
What?
screen, Ron. We can't see it.
Oh, you can't see this one?
No.
Oh, I apologize. I'm hosting from my virtual desktop, and I'm trying to, since I don't want to layer one virtual desktop inside another, I might not be able to show you. I can show you the access of it, but I won't launch it from inside my VDI. And yes, if anybody's curious, I am running this entire presentation from a VDI session our whole time. This is my everyday work desktop. I practice what I preach here, so. All right, let's turn this top. So now if I go ahead and, let me see, that was assigned to
Unidesk 2 or 3, right? One of those two.
Unidesk 3. So if I go ahead and log in, I can now see my desktops available to me, and I can go ahead and launch it. Would this break anything if I do it inside another VDI session?
No.
Yeah, we can go ahead and
do it all the time.
Yeah.
And you can have XenApp, a receiver going to XenApp apps and all that as well.
Yep. So we do that on occasion. Like some of our outside partners, we do host published app. We do still host published applications, which actually turns out to be a very good marriage of technologies. Unidesk will provide the virtual desktop environment. I'll log in, and then inside there, I'll have a Citrix receiver, pulling some of our published applications. So not all of our applications are done through a layering system. We do still have some on an old, proprietary silo environments that we deploy out this way. Applications that don't run. We want to run a Windows 7 desktop, but the application doesn't run on Windows 7, technology. We still have XP or Windows NT or Windows 2000 reliant applications. We just put those into our XenApp environment and publish them out to our users via publish apps and Citrix. So as you can see here, now we have our desktop, available to us. This is exactly what an end user would see in our environment. We have the Office as part of our base layers. If we come through here, we should see that we have Adobe Standard installed, as well as some of these other applications, which I'm not really even sure what they do, Essential Forms. My desktop guys can explain better, but you go ahead and launch the application and go ahead and run with it just as you would a physical desktop. So pretty simple. Any questions regarding that process, or? I know we're starting to reach a time limit here. So I'm going to go ahead and start to pull back on the demo here. I know we're starting to reach the 12 o'clock hour, and everybody's time's important to them, so I don't want to keep
one thing I can mention about the different things that you can do with layers, because it's kind of neat. When you're working in a layer, we capture writes to the disks, or you can even delete things from the disk. You can add to the registry, remove from the registry. So you can, for instance, add a SQL Server or an IIS within a layer to a desktop, which is kind of a neat thing. You can also go from IE11, if that's your standard, and most people have it. You can create a layer, go back, basically remove IE11, going back to IE10. And then if you deploy that layer to people who would have IE10, it would kind of mask and remove the files just as well as add them. It's a very flexible format if you want to just deploy files to people or templates. There's lots of things you can do in a layer. It's kind of neat.
Ron, so now that we're at the end and the users have these desktops and they're using this, what is the feedback then from the judges? Does the benefit to them of being able to work from home on the same computer that's at their desk, and has that changed their perception of you?
Very much so. Very much so. They were a little hesitant at first. We went to their most of our judges work in a two-station environment, right? They have the bench that they run the court session on, and then they have their chambers that they go back and do all their work in the back end. Beforehand, they used to have two separate PCs and sometimes use remote PC So when they're on the bench, they remote PC back into their chambers PC to kind of get information that they needed back there. It was, kind of archaic and a hassle for them. So the minute that we put VDI out there, we have thin clients, on both sides, or sometimes some judges will have a touchscreen on the bench. The minute we were able to log them into their virtual desktop, they played around with it for a while. We're not going to lie. There were some growing pains over the past 3 or 4, 3.5 years of getting to where we are today. But in today's environment, now they go into one spot, they move up to the bench, their desktop follows them right there. Everything that they had, not having to worry about saving work or changing anything between the two desktops. They love that. Same thing, they go home, they connect in from their laptop at home, they have their same desktop, same performance, and they've been extremely happy.
Thanks for that clarification.
So, no problem. And and the good thing for us is that since our judges are our boss, and we're able to get the buy-in from the judges as well, that marketing trickles down to all the end users. Their clerks then start to understand, if the judges are happy, then hey, we're going to, probably be happy as well, because the judges are in our environment, the judges are the ones to kindness. But we accept that as a positive challenge, because if we can meet their needs, then we feel confident that we can meet, the rest of the court's needs as well. So we use that as a marketing tool, for our deployment.
Seeing that we're at the top of the hour, does the audience have any other questions for Ron?
Yeah, this is Amy from Unidesk again. Ron, if you want to go back to your last slide in your PowerPoint, because I think you had some contact information available there, just in case anybody is too shy to ask now or comes up with something later. You can. Ron did agree that you can contact him directly and pick his brain about everything he talked about today. And you also have the contact information for Eric and for Rob there as well. And one last thing that we'd like to mention is that Unidesk and Citrix are both available for trial, so you can check out both websites for any information about that. And soon, Unidesk is going to have Hyper-V Tech Preview, which will also support Zen Desktop, so that's just something to keep in mind as well. So let's see, I don't think we have any more questions here. So I think we'll just wrap that up and say, Ron, we can't thank you enough for giving such a thorough presentation and an awesome demo. And once again, follow up with anybody here if you have any more questions, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
I appreciate it. And like Amy said, I'm definitely open and available for questions outside this webinar as well. So thank you, guys.